Dennis Emmanuel Brown, the Crown Prince, and the greatest reggae vocalist of all time, is one of the most beloved and influential musicians to emerge from Jamaica, who started warring audiences before the age of 10. He was the island's answer to Michael Jackson and grew up in the spotlight of music industry. Adored by fans, chased after by producers, and respected by his peers, he enjoyed a prolific career that made him a star to emulate. Blessed with a smooth voice, his army beautiful soul, and a warm, infectious smile, Bob Marley was a huge fan of his and called him the greatest reggae singer in the world. It's been said that the world loved Bob Marley, but Jamaica loved Dennis Brown. But behind the flashing lights, world tours, and millions of records sold, Dennis Brown was a victim of an industry designed to extract all its good from the consummate artists, whose first love was music, and his adoring fans. The evils of the music business are notoriously non-selective of his victims. What has claimed the high number of a certain demographic, and by the time that Dennis Brown came of age, he was already addicted with it. He would eventually succumb at the age of 42. Another statistic in the sad list of child stars destroyed by the industry. Dennis Brown's story began on February 1st, 1957 in Kingston, Jamaica. He grew up in West Kingston near Orange Street, otherwise known as Beat Street, which was the hub of the recording industry in 1960s and 1970s in Jamaica. Brown was 9 years old when he was billed as the Boy Wonder and started sharing stages with Jamaica's leading band, Baron Lee and the Dragons. By the age of 12, he was already a veteran of many stages and caught the eye of legendary producer Coxsone Dodd of Studio One, the studio regarded as Jamaica's University of Reggae Music, the studio that was the birthplace of regular royalty, from Toots and Maytals, Burning Spear, down to the likes of Bob Marley and the Wailers. Coxsone Dodd was the equivalent of Jamaica's Quincy Jones, and Dennis Brown, the amazing boy wonder, was his own Michael Jackson, complete with the kid-through and charming smile. The ink was barely dry on the contract papers when young Brown entered the studios to begin recording music, and he showed that he was special. In a 2-day session, enough material was successfully recorded to make up 2 albums that were 1970s. No Man is an Island and 1971's If I Follow My Heart. What the producers and sound engineers found unbelievable was how such a young singer could enter the recording booth and record so much material with almost no mistakes. His first 2 albums were well received and commercially successful, but by the time 1972's Super Soul hit album was released, his childhood voice had broken, and he now had a deep, honey-coated texture. And not only one of our leaders of new fans, but opened the floodgates to music producers who are literally falling over themselves to record him. He was set to be a delight to work within the studio because of his humility and tireless work ethic. Brown sessions were always very productive, and producers could extract a lot in limited time. Jamaica's music producers had a terrible reputation for exploiting musicians, and when you combine that factor with the young Dennis Brown, who didn't know how to say no and genuinely loved to sing his heart out, you have a recipe for burnout and eventual disaster. At Brown's peak, he was recording a superhuman tally of 6 albums per year to add to an already amazing feat. The quality of music was stunning, and the fans couldn't get enough of him. He broke the Jamaican record for most #1 singles, and eventually cranked out an incredible 80 albums in his career. In addition to the rigorous recording schedule, he was also in high demand for live shows and played hundreds of concerts to ecstatic crowds. He got to see the teenage sensation in the flesh. He was a national people pleaser, a very generous and kind soul who felt that his gift was something to share with the world. By the age of 17, he was already experiencing burnout and began to have health challenges from overwork. In the middle of a hectic tour schedule in 1974, he developed a lung infection, which was aggravated by overwork and fatigue. When the news went out that Jamaica's golden boy was ill, the whole country united in prayers for him. He underwent surgery that left one lung barely functional. He pulled through despite all odds. He wrote and sang the song "In Conqueror" in 1974 as a testimony of pulling through. His doctor advised him to take it easy, but then his Brown by then no longer belonged to himself. He was now the property of the music industry and the workhorse for the producers, record labels, and concert promoters. He kept touring and recording at an astonishing pace. On top of his obligations to his music career, he was also an amazingly loyal friend. He was kind and generous to a fault, and would always go out of his way to please and satisfy people. One of his best friends and fellow child star, Freddie McGregor, who was also signed to Studio One, said in an interview that Dennis Brown was one of the most giving and caring human beings ever walked the earth. In his own words, if Dennis knew that your problem was money, he didn't mind giving all he had to make sure you were okay. If you were sad, Dennis would do anything to make you smile. Then his Brown had a natural desire to give and not let people down. Unfortunately, he ascended this to his career, and he destroyed his body by the time he had entered his 20s. This, by extension, threatened his ability to keep performing at the highest level. During an overseas tour, Brown had played dozens of shows and was clearly feeling the effects of exhaustion. He was struggling to maintain his energy levels when one of the promoters came to him one night and told him he didn't look like he could continue the tour, threatening to cancel it. Brown was upset and insisted he could go on. This promoter told him he had something that would give him a lift and brought out some cocaine, which he sniffed and offered some to Brown, who refused. But the tour schedule kept getting tighter, and the promoter kept up the pressure until Dennis eventually agreed to use the drugs just before show went out. And just as the promoter had predicted, he delivered a spectacular performance, and before the tour was over, Dennis Brown was officially an addict. He grew dependent on drugs just to get by and perform like he used to do. And while it was allowing him perform consistently, it was also eating him up from the inside out. Over time, it was alleged that he was seen backstage at concert in the US with drug paraphernalia, in open view, making new efforts to hide his addiction and deadly habits. He also began to isolate himself and only allowed access to people that wouldn't approve of what he was doing. By the 1990s, his health had seriously unraveled, but he was still a feature on many notable concert stages, in live performances, and on massive platforms. And while released on Splash in May 1999, he went on a tour of Brazil with other artists, like the Gregory Isaacs, and was arrested for cocaine possession. He was later released and returned to Jamaica, despite his bigger troubles. But on 30th of June, he was rushed to the hospital after collapsing, and later passed away on July 1st of lung failure related to pneumonia. He died and left behind distraught family, friends, and fans worldwide. The Crown Prince of Reggae had been taken away, a victim of his own habits, and another casualty of the music business that had claimed so many child stars before him. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos.